Greetings, Inquisitors! Welcome to the Holocron. In Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, it's not too hard to get one of your characters to Gear 12, but making that jump to Gear 13 and working on their relic levels can be quite challenging, especially for newer players. If you're a new player or an experienced player, I'm going to try to help you solve that problem today and figure out the most efficient and effective way to get these characters to Gear 13 and advance their relic levels. I'm Darth Loquitur. Please remember, as we get started, use your like saber. Get that like button out of here. I would certainly appreciate it. This is the 5th in my series of player guides for 2025. If you're interested in any of the other 6, please go watch those as well. New players will find the first 3 quite informative, and players of any level can benefit from 4, 5, and 6. First, let's define Gear 12 and Gear 13 just to make sure we're all on the same page. To be clear, I consider Gear 12 to be when the character has been promoted to Gear 12. They have this golden border around them, and they look like this picture of 50RT that you see here. Gear 13 is when you get the gear filled in and you take them to the next gear level, and it gains a colored border and no longer has any gear slots for you to fill. So once you go from Gear 12 to Gear 13, the gear slots go away, the border becomes red, blue, or gray, and you get a relic amplifier in the corner. When you open up your character, down in the lower left-hand corner, you will see a picture, and that is where you amplify the level of your character's relic. So each relic has like an individual feature. It's like some flavor text. It's an item or something that was important to that character. And that's what I'm talking about when we talk about Relic 1, Relic 5, Relic 7. That's simply the level of the relic amplifier. Importance of relics. So if you're playing this game and you start building characters to Gear 12 and you figure out how hard it is to relic characters, I've seen accounts where people just keep taking all kinds of characters to Gear 12, and they've got an account that's a year old and they've only built like 2 relics. Just be aware this is a game that is now designed based on relic level characters, and you cannot fully participate in this game in most game modes unless at least some of your characters are at relic levels. So finishing out a character, getting them to Gear 13, advancing their relic levels is a critical part of the game. There's a lot of journeys that require you to take characters to relic levels and sometimes to quite high relic levels. So suffice to say, a little bit of hard truth, if you're not making relics on your account, then you're not playing Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. Even if you're a casual player, this is the case. It's true of a person that's been playing for 2 years, 2 months, or 1 day. Relics are Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. Lightspeed bundles, when they provide you characters in the Lightspeed bundles, those are at Relic, right? That's the game we're playing. Let's learn how to do that well. 5 steps. We're going to talk about 5 different concepts involved in making characters Gear 13 and Relic. First thing is prioritize, figure out the right character to Relic, and then focus only on that character until it's done. Don't put pieces for Gear 13 on 6 different characters and have them all partly finished. Once you have 6 characters partly finished, you could have had 2 or possibly 3 of the characters fully finished. So don't do that, right? Let's pick the right character, focus on one at a time, build them to Relic. Second, be patient. Trying to buy your relics with cash or crystals just outruns your abilities to put on Zetas, Omicrons, and good mods. If it takes you 2 weeks to relic a character, it's also going to take you 2 weeks to get the Zetas on that character, to build up Omicron materials, and to farm up some good mods. So just be aware that the timelines of the game go together quite well, and if you rush the relics, you'll just be out of the other stuff. Third, use the shops for the right materials. We've already talked a lot about the shops. The prior Holocron number 4 in this series was all about the shops. You can go watch that if you want. But we'll talk about in here again the shops for relic making materials. Fourth, we're going to talk about feeding the scavenger the right scraps. And then fifth, we're going to talk about managing the signal data that we need to take the relic levels up. So the very first thing, who to relic? The best way to target your relics is to select a journey. Once you go on a journey, it's going to talk to you. It's going to give you a list of relics that are required for that journey. So you may need characters for a raid. That's the second thing. So if you need relic characters to participate in a raid to help your guild, that could be another target. For the newest accounts, if you want to chase after the newest content, the character that just got introduced, you're going to find it's going to be very expensive and time consuming. A lot of the older characters are easier to build. It's much easier to stabilize your account using some of the older characters, and the newer characters are just more expensive in terms of their gear and farming and their shards and all of it, right? So that's how we're going to pick our targets. What journey are we on? Do we need to get raid participation? And then is there an event or something else that we have to make a relic character for? What journey to pick? If you're a brand new player, you're going to pick discarded doctrine and start working on the executor capital ship. There's reasons for that I've explained in my prior holocrons. Securing high placement in fleet trumps everything else at the start, so make that executor your first journey. Once you've got that first journey done, you can work on Galactic Legends and other things. You can work on the executor and at the same time unlock Grandmaster Yoda, CLS, work on your Phoenix for Thrawn. All of those journeys don't require relic characters. They just require, certain characters at certain stars. So I'm not talking about those journeys. I'm talking about just the journeys that have relic characters to help you identify the right one to work on. If we take apart how it looks to take a character from Gear 12 to Gear 13, it's a very predictable pattern that's the same for every character that you will ever take to relic. On the left-hand side, there's 3 different pieces that you'll need, and each one of those pieces will require 30 of a legendary material, typically farmed with dark and light side currency. It'll also take 2 times 20 of the epic purple gear pieces. Some of those are farmed from fleet, and some of those are farmed for the light and dark side energy. Suffice to say, when you're making relics, we're going to try to farm that stuff that we need with fleet energy. We're going to do it. We're going to farm it. That's going to be our main source of getting things like med packs and scanners. Then for the materials like this detonator that we need to farm with regular currency, we're really going to try to get those out of the shops. The shard shop, guild event token 1, those kinds of purchases to make sure that we don't have to waste our energy farming that if possible. If you look at the right side, the top 2 pieces follow the same pattern. The top 2 pieces will require 3 different parts. One of them will be 50 of some kind of Mark 12 gear. Then there'll be 2 times 20 of some other type of gold Mark 12 gear. And then the third piece will require some purple pieces, some normal Gear 12 type gear, and either more of those parts that you farm from fleet. The very bottom part, the low right part, that is going to be different for characters. There's 3 different formats, so any given character might have any one of the 3 formats. Each of the formats takes a different injector part and a little bit different materials there. The injector parts can really be a headache for new accounts, so we're going to try to get those from events. And again, I've talked about getting these parts in my prior holocrons, but just suffice to say, especially for newer players, you may still have to farm some of those with regular energy in order to get this character built. Okay, so now that we know what the anatomy looks like, how do we pick up all those parts? Once we get a character to Gear 13, we're also going to have to take up the relic levels. There's all different kinds of materials that you see here that are required for Relic Amplifier. There's signal data that you have to farm out of the cantina. and you can also purchase it in some of the shops, like in a Conquest Scavengers and places like that as well. So that's all the stuff that we need to talk about. Reaching steady state. So if you're not in a guild that's doing the most current raid, don't be surprised. A lot of beginner guilds are just simming raids, and that means you're not going to get more Mark III raid tokens. Okay? It's important to build up a raid team, get into a guild. Within the first, let's say, 2 or 3 months that you're playing, you're going to want to try to get into a guild that's doing the newest raid. Some people may not be able to do that, so I'll give advice for people also at the very start of the game who may not have access to those tokens. So we'll include both. So if you have Mark II raid tokens, you're going to buy these materials, the stuff that costs $285 and $335 for 5, or $855 or $1,005 for 15 of them. We're going to purchase those with the Mark II raid tokens. Okay. Purchasing these for crystals, for guild event tokens, Grand Arena, or the 720 cost purchases in the shard shop. They're available in all those places, but those are inefficient purchases. So we want to avoid that if we can. If you can't afford this Mark II raid currency to get these materials, then you will have to farm them up manually. Most of them come from fleet. Acquiring this stuff from the shard shop, the left side parts that have the Mark 12 times 30, we're going to want to acquire those from the shard shop, also with guild event token 1, and from the Conquest Scavengers if you have extra currency. Farming these is inefficient. There is a material called a bayonet. The Mark 12 bayonet is on a really good node. So if you have to farm any of these, if you're behind in your shard shop currency or something and you have to farm them, the bayonets are the only ones that you're going to want to farm. But you should be able to keep up with these out of the shops. At first, you may intentionally need to scrap characters from the squad, Galactic War Store, or fleet in order to make shard shop currency in order to buy these parts. So just be aware of that. Like, let's say you build 3 characters out of Squad Arena. Don't go building a 4th and 5th and 6th character if you don't need those characters right now. Don't just build characters for the sake of building more characters to 7 stars. Focus on what you need. Once you have the characters that you need, you can spend those tokens buying the same characters over and over again. That'll give you extra shards that'll go to the shard shop and let you purchase these materials. So early game players, you may have to intentionally feed the shard shop. For these purple Gear 12 epics, you'll know these parts when you see them on the characters. There's always used in the format of 2 times 20. Farm the parts that take fleet energy, but try to acquire all the ones that take light and dark side energy from the shard shop. In my holocron that talks about the shops, I make all that clear. Go back and watch number 4, and it will tell you all about that. Kyrotech is needed for every character going to Gear 13. You'll need 100 Kyrotech. So typically I buy the computers from the Grand Arena store with Guild Event Token 2 or 3, or from the Episode Shop. There's places where you can buy a Kyrotech, right? I default to buying the computers and farming the shock prods. The node that has the shock prods also has Mark V data pads that are used for making bronzium wiring. So I want to farm all the shock prods that I can from that node and also get bronzium wiring materials. Injector parts. There's 3 types of injector parts. Every character needs 50. Once you have enough assault battles at Challenge Tier 1, you'll get enough of those all the time. You won't have to worry about it. But for newer players, you will have to find those out of the shop or potentially farm them. Other parts. Most other parts can be purchased for Mark 1 raid tokens or received through events. And when I'm talking about that, again, if we go back to the anatomy of the relic, there'll usually be a part like this Mark IV Back-to-Gel or a Mark X HoloLens or something like that that are in these right side pieces. So that's what I'm talking about. Those materials you can just get from Mark I raid tokens or from other shops. Once you get those pieces locked down and you take a character to gear 13, then you're going to need to amplify the relic levels. So in order to do this efficiently, you do need to be in a guild that's getting Mark III raid tokens. You need to be able to buy those higher level materials like the Electrum conductors, the Zinbittle cards, and arrow magnifiers, things like that. If you can't purchase those from the shops, it will slow you down a lot trying to make higher level relic characters. Signal data is always a bottleneck in achieving high relic levels, so you'll need to farm Cantina every day, do the 300 cost refreshes every day. After that, it gets too expensive. You will have to farm characters out of the Cantina occasionally as well, but as a general rule of thumb, I say 80% of your Cantina energy is for signal data, 20% on characters, but overall, basically just understand you don't want to skip those refreshes. You don't want a day to go by where you say, well, I'm not going to refresh Cantina today, right? You need to get in there every day, get those 3 basic refreshes, and use those for signal data as much as you possibly can. Carbonite circuit boards, the first of the materials that you need for relics. I can't keep up with this. There's no way that I've ever calculated or found in the game to get these efficiently. So what we have to do, what I do, when this Relic Amplifier pack comes into the shop, this pack is usually in the shop for 1 week out of the month. Whenever it shows up, I'll make a purchase or two for 500 crystals. I just save up the crystals, make the purchase, and you get a random number of them. And it's not, let's say, it doesn't feel great using 500 crystals on this, but it allows you to solve the problem of the carbonite circuit boards, and you won't have to worry about where to find those. If you try to farm materials, there's some really low-level nodes that have tons of materials, and I've had people tell me before, I farm light side 1D or 1F for carbonite circuit boards. But if you calculate out the rate of converting those materials to carbonite circuit boards, the conversion is awful. If you're throwing away regular energy farming that, when you could instead be farming light side 7B for Kyrotech and data pads, then you've missed it. You've missed the boat. The boat left you. We're not on the boat. So spend your refreshes on the Kyro, and for these carbonite circuit boards, just be aware you'll probably have to make the purchases. Bronzium wiring is, by my calculations, one of the 3 fundamental bottlenecks in building high relic characters. So again, there's not a way to solve it. Unfortunately, this Relic Amplifier pack that you could buy for 500 for the bronzium wiring is a lot less efficient than the carbonite circuit board one. So you can buy these packs, but it's it's not really a great deal. So basically, you have to farm the Kyrotech specifically with getting those data pads for bronzium wiring in mind. You have to look in the shops, particularly in the guild store and shops like that, the Squad Arena store. They sometimes sell materials that can be converted to bronzium wiring. You have to purchase those materials whenever you can from those shops as well. But it's hard to keep up with the bronzium wiring, so if you're struggling with that, just realize that probably everybody's struggling. And again, you may have to occasionally make those purchases for the 500 card. Chromium transistors. I make my chromium transistors at the scavenger. I don't purchase these from any shops. At the bottom, you'll see where you can convert completed pieces. And these 2 completed pieces specifically, the Mark VII Baw Armor and the Mark VII Weapon Tech, those are both easy to craft. So if you click on the icon for the completed materials, it'll give you a craft button, and you can see what's required to craft them. Sometimes you'll have to farm up like these Mark I droid collars. You might need to farm some of those up in order to craft the weapon tech. But when you craft these materials, they convert to chromium transistors at an incredibly good value. So remember that. Try not to use the basic materials that are at the top of the selection when you're in the scavenger, but go down toward the bottom, select the completed materials, craft them up, and convert them at a very high rate. It should be no problem. And if you go in there once a week, you might have to farm up a couple Mark I droid collars, but it's not going to take too much energy, and you'll be able to make a ton of them. Iridium heat sinks. I make these exclusively with the Mark III hollow projectors. Crafted projectors only. If you go in the shop and you look, a basic part will get you a certain amount of iridium heat sinks. A completed part will get you 5 heat sinks. If you look at something like, I think the Mark V stun guns might be something that's in there. So if you completed the part, 50 parts gets you 5 iridium heat sinks. The hollow projector, a completed part, still gets you 5, but it only takes 20 pieces to make a finished part. So I don't know if they just didn't do the calculation right when they made this shop, but this gives you 5 like any other completed piece, but it only takes 20 salvage instead of 50. So this is the most efficient way to do it. And these are a really good value for Mark I raid tokens. So you'll spend a whole bunch of Mark I raid tokens, buy a whole bunch of these hollow projectors, craft them into completed parts, and then make all your iridium heat sinks that way. Electrium conductors, you're going to want to purchase that with the Mark III raid tokens. If you do need to scavenge this, do try to use completed parts first. So if you've got a low relic rate, if you're making okay use of the shard shop, but you're out of these materials and you need to get some electrium conductors, if you complete the part first, you'll use up some of the purple materials that you can farm and get a better conversion. So if you have to actually farm for your electrium conductor materials, then you'll want to farm the cybernetics. The cybernetics are on a node that also gives you the Mark IV back-to-gel. That's another piece that we need for a lot of stuff. And if you farm it this way, then you can get what you need to make electrium conductors and also, help solve the problem on some other gear pieces. So that's the recommended node. Zinbittle cards. Again, we're going to purchase those with the Mark III raid tokens. If you're getting Mark II raid tokens but not 3, you can also just purchase the relevant parts that you need to convert for Zinbittle cards. Just buy those gear parts for Mark II raid tokens and crunch them up into Zinbittle cards at the scavenger. If you absolutely have to farm it and there's no other choice, then you're going to want to farm Fleet 3C. That gives you the Mark XII HoloLenses. That's going to be the most efficient gear node to farm. It's also going to give you Mark VI syringes and some other gear pieces. Impulse detectors for Relic 8. Again, we're going to purchase these with Mark III raid tokens. These are pretty horrible to craft. But if you do need to farm for crafting, farm Lightside 9F. That's the Mark XII bayonet node. That's a good node with a lot of other stuff. It also has the Mark III projectors that's helping you with other materials as well as some other gear pieces. The arrow magnifiers for Relic 8. Purchase those with the Mark III raid tokens. You can also get those sometimes from events. These can't be made at the scavenger, so we're typically going to have to make purchase of them. If there's no other way for you to get them, this may be a thing where you just have to save up 500 crystals and go to the Relic pack amplifier pack when it shows up, again, 1 week out of the month. If you look at the weekly shipments, you can make a purchase of arrow magnifiers for crystals. The pack that you get out of the shop gives you a little bit of a chance to do better, right? So you at least got a chance to roll for a more efficient output. So if you have to buy these, I would suggest buying the Relic Amplifier pack. Gear to keypads, these are pretty expensive. You can buy them with Mark III raid tokens if you want. If you're in a position where you can keep up with Relic materials, you can also do that same thing where you use the Mark II raid tokens and buy the gear and then make the keypads. I make all my keypads with gear. I don't purchase these with the Mark III raid tokens. I already need all of my Mark III raid tokens for all of the other materials we just talked about. So I will either buy the gear or I'll actually farm those Mark 12 furnaces. Mark 12 furnace is a good farm for the gear to keypads. But just suffice to say, Relic 9 is hard. Relic 9 is hard in the game. Getting these keypads made is challenging. And then droid brains are also needed for Relic 9, and these are very difficult to obtain. So for new accounts, it's hard to get. And if you really need to make a Relic 9 character, consider looking at the episode pass. If you pay for the episode pass and you can complete the whole track, you'll get 5 droid brains as part of the rewards. The episode pass is already good, efficient purchase. So if you're willing to do that, that'll help you solve the droid brain problem. Otherwise, you have to make these purchases out of the weekly shipments. One purchase gets you 5 for 1,500 crystals. If you buy the episode pass, that 1,500 crystals represents half of what you're going to pay for the pass anyway, and you get tons of other materials. So just be aware, if you've got time, if you've got a couple months, the episode pass is going to be the most efficient way to acquire those droid brains if you can't get them somewhere else in the game. But again, making a Relic 9 character, I can make 3 or 4 Relic 9 characters a year. Even doing it efficiently, it's pretty tough getting all the materials together and getting these characters made. Okay, Relic making timeline. If you look at how long it takes to make a relic, I've just talked about a bunch of stuff and I said, here's how to be efficient. Just be aware, when you're first starting out the game, I did my Lex Talionis project as the most recent account I've played. And after I got level 85 and worked on relics, it took me about 4 weeks to build the first character to relics. And that's because you just have to farm a lot of these materials. You pick a little bit of up out of the shop. It just takes a long time. That same account, I've been playing for about a year, and I'm to the point now where it's taking me 13 days per Gear 13 character. So I get 1 relic character every 2 weeks on a completely free-to-play account that's in a beginner guild, right? I don't get much of the Raid 3 tokens, Mark 3 raid tokens, and I'm still able to build a relic every couple weeks. On my main account, my Darth Loquitur account that I play, it's what I would consider a mid-game account. When I went back and looked at my timeline, I made 50 relics in 42 weeks. So that's a rate of 1 relic per 5.8 days, 5.9 days. The only money I spend on that account, I do buy the Conquest Pass, and I have been purchasing the Episode Pass recently. But of course, most of that 42 weeks is not going to be with the Episode Pass. But 1 relic about every 6 days. So that's the rate that I've been able to get to. If you're willing to spend money in the game, you can improve that even a little bit more, especially if you buy those bronzium wiring packs and find other ways to get signal data or do more refreshes in the cantina. So we can accelerate it even past that point, but for sort of that like free-to-play efficiency, if you can get 1 relic character a week, you're on track for being pretty efficient. So in conclusion, when you pick a character to take from Gear 12 to Relic, focus on just that character. Make sure it's the right character and finish what you start. Use the right shops in the right way to get your materials stocked up. Use fleet energy to farm a lot of those epic purple Gear 13 requirement materials. Use the shop for Kyro computers and farm your Kyro shock prods off of Lightside 7B so that you can also get those bronzium wiring materials. Make assault battle teams to make sure that you get a supply of the injector parts so that you don't have to farm them all the time. Use the scavenger efficiently by knowing where to get the materials and what to convert. Consider using that carbonite circuit board pack, because I don't think you're going to be able to get enough any other way. Only farm Cantina characters that you really need for a team. Don't just farm a bunch of characters out of the Cantina because you'd like to have them at 7 stars. Only farm the things that you need for a team, for a journey, and then use all the rest of your Cantina energy on signal data. Avoid journeys that require Relic 9 at first until you're ready to commit to finding those droid brains. It's just, it makes good sense if that's like the hardest material in the game to acquire. Don't abuse yourself and limit your fun by picking journeys that require 3 Relic 9 characters, right? A journey that has 1 Relic 9, if you're willing to commit to it, that's fine. But if you're a new player, try to stick to things that only go up to Relic 8, and that way you don't have to worry about it until you're ready. That's going to wrap up the 5th of my player guides for 2025. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to hit that like button on the way out if you didn't hit it on the way in. Subscribe to see more of my stuff in the future. Hit the notification bell so you know when I'm doing my live streams. And of course, join us over on the Discord. The Discord's a fun community. If you want to come ask questions, there's plenty of people that'll give you help. There's an Ask Loquitur channel. You can direct your questions at me if you want to, and I'll get you an answer when I have a chance. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next Holocron.